I don't have a control over a lot of things, but I'm able to remember that there is a God who's all-powerful, almighty, who cares and who has a plan.
This is the Prayer Culture Podcast. All right, well, welcome back to the Prayer Culture Podcast. Once again, we are at Plant Houston, which is a conference that the Houston Church Planting Network holds at the end of a month of prayer and fasting. And so we're really excited to be here. There's a lot of different church planners, different people who are involved in just the work of the Lord and in prayer. And so we ran into Spencer here. Spencer Littlejohn. Yes, that's his last name. And he is a chaplain with the military. And so just tell us kind of how you got into that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, I'm a chaplain in the Texas Army National Guard. And I got into that because God found me with it. I had been struggling for a while to figure out if I was going to pursue full-time vocational ministry or if it was just I was just going to be out in the world ministering, as in kind of the secular world.
Right.
And I had an interest in the military it's kind of a long story, but I had an interest in the military for a while. But God started closing some doors on that. And eventually it got to a point where I just felt the Lord was saying, just surrender and go to seminary and for whatever it's going to be. And it was actually in seminary that one of my professors was a chaplain in the National Guard. And
Wow.
I didn't know it was even a thing that I could do. And it just fused those two passions that the Lord had put on my heart into one thing. And so I've been doing that since 2015. And
Wow.
yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. So tell us just a little bit about hey, what does it look like to be a chaplain in the military?
Okay. So a chaplain is there to provide religious support, spiritual and religious support to soldiers. And there's the lowest level that a chaplain comes in at is the battalion level. So there's one battalion chaplain, right, for the whole spectrum of
Wow.
all the soldiers that are in that battalion, which could be from 300 to 700 soldiers in that battalion, there would be one chaplain for them, right? So it's an interesting line that you have to kind of walk because you have to stay faithful to your denomination, your ecclesiastical endorser.
Yeah.
Right. So before you even become a chaplain, you talk to your denomination and they'll, that they want to verify that you are a good representation of them to put in the military. So they verify that and they submit a document to the military that says this member is in good faith with us and represents us.
Sure.
So they endorse us, and you cannot be a chaplain in the military without that.
Wow.
Right. So and they can remove it too if they see that you're not operating according to their the denominational faith. Right. So
I imagine that's kind of a comforting thing because you have
it is comforting.
that
you
covering.
You have that support. It's not that the military is determining matters of faith.
Exactly.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. They're just saying this is a representative of these faith groups, and we the terminology we use is we perform or we provide religious support. Okay. So perform would be we actually do the worship services. We preach, we counsel according to our faith tradition, but there's also this element of provide in which, say, we have a soldier from a faith that's different than ours, right? Because it's it's a culture that's you have all kinds of faiths in the military, right? And the military sees that it's important to support them in their with their spiritual needs and to respect their needs, right? And they have the free exercise of religion, right? And so we want to protect that from them because the military becomes it's kind of like its own unique home away from home. It's almost like this island of unique culture and regulations and different things. And so the Constitution protects that that a soldier shouldn't be overburdened to not be able to exercise their faith. So as a battalion chaplain, we kind of are a point person for someone to say, hey, this is important to me in my faith, and they can bring those issues to us, and we can help have the conversation with their commanders to make sure that they're getting the accommodations that they need, within the prescribed allowance of regulations.
Sure. So within that environment, you have, like you said, people of many different, tribes and groups and stuff, and they come together in like a new kind of tribe kind of thing.
Yeah.
How do you incorporate prayer into that environment in a way that's just really, really healthy, and honors the Lord?
Yeah. So there's a number of areas where we'll be given the opportunity to pray. There's more formal type situations, and then there's just a lot of the one-on-one time. So a lot of times we might pray with before a ceremony, right? A change of command ceremony or memorial ceremonies. We do those and pray in those instances. Sometimes before a command and staff meeting, we might offer a prayer, right? To not to make that necessarily a required part of the meeting, but occasionally they'll ask us to pray for their concerns, situations that are going on with the mission, right? Things just of concern, we can bring those to the Lord. And but a lot of the times it's just praying one-on-one with soldiers that come to you, and they might be a completely different background, but they're coming to you for confidential counseling, and they're sharing their burdens or whatever situation it is. Life happens to all of us in all different stages. So if having trouble with their marriages or having a health crisis that's weighing on them. I had a situation where someone had an injury, and it was causing him to feel very like this uselessness, like I can't do my job, right? And it was weighing really heavily on him. And so there's opportunities to pray in all of those situations, and it's a lot of times when you get to a place where there's tangible things that you want to do, right? And there's lots of resources that we can refer people to get the help that they need. But a lot of the time, it's recognizing that, hey, this is a situation where we need to see God act.
Yeah.
And being able to say, hey, there's someone who can listen to what your concern is and bring it to the Lord. And so sometimes that's something that just brings peace to people, is being able to know, hey, I don't have a control over a lot of things, but I'm able to remember that there is a God who's all powerful, almighty, who cares and who has a plan, and we can bring our concerns to him, right? And so I feel honored that I get to be there for people in those types of moments.
That's so good.
And from what I'm hearing too, it's like, there's a lot that's kind of put in place in, your job as a chaplain where, the thing that I kind of latched onto as you were saying that is talking about, people could be coming to you from, different faiths, different backgrounds, things like that. Have you ever run into a situation, and also like, as we're talking about prayer and as you're talking about seeing, hey, the Lord needs to act in this situation, has there ever been an opportunity you feel like to where God doing something actually served as him revealing himself to somebody who maybe hadn't been a Christian or something, and that kind of brought them to a place where they're hey, like, this is the Lord.
I I feel like that there's times where that may have happened. I haven't seen how it's always panned out necessarily, but we've seen some cool things happen, and most of the time it's just the peace that it brings to a person is what I see
Yep.
most of the time, where they're just so overburdened, and just being able to release that, and it's like it kind of changes their whole demeanor of just the way they're thinking about things, and that's kind of how I've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen God show up in ways as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And people can attribute things different ways, but I think God's in control of all of it. So I mean,
Yeah.
there was a time where we were doing a field artillery exercise, and there was I came in to a room, or well, it was a tent, and they were talking about how there was a artillery shell. It was stuck. A round was stuck in the tube, and that can be a dangerous situation.
Oh, yeah.
And I came in and I just said like a brief like. I didn't even really gather anyone. I kind of just prayed to myself, Lord, please help this get cleared up. And literally right after we had prayed that, they called back on the radio, hey, we cleared it and stuff. So I don't know if everyone else necessarily noticed that, but there's times like that I've seen, just being able to be around and notice what are the issues, what are the things that we're concerned about, and just say, hey, God, we need you to help us with this situation. So
Well, and it gives you access, I would think. It gives you this access to people, because you're in the military. There's probably a lot of stress related with a lot of things you got to do. And
Oh, yeah.
and so you get like to counsel people, and they come to you, and it's like, oh, I know what this person's going through. So now in my prayer time, I can go to the Lord Jesus and say, Jesus, please help this person in this way. Or, you've got specific access where you can then pray to the Lord to touch them and bring them to know him and all that stuff. And that's really, I think that's probably a really good opportunity, right? Like,
oh yeah, it's amazing, and I get to hear things as a chaplain. We're one of the only ones that has complete confidentiality, where a soldier can bring something that they may have been carrying a long time and didn't want to tell anyone else, and so I'm kind of bound to that, but getting to hear that, it really does inform the prayers, my own prayers for the soldiers. So.
as a reminder, the Prayer Culture Podcast is a ministry of two or more, which is a crowd-funded ministry. So if you enjoy this content, please check out our website and giving page listed in the description. Also, when you have a second, hit the like and subscribe button.
Yeah. And I think one thing that is really interesting, and you can tell me if this is something that you've seen, but just in my own experience of learning more about the role of, any kind of, I guess what I call it, like trials or suffering. Like in the military, I think guys face a lot of, like you said, stress, and a lot of times a lot of trauma. They face a lot of, things that they're having, a lot of them are putting their lives on the line. That kind of condition, how that then brings people closer to the Lord and how that's reflected in prayer. Do you tend to witness that a lot?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've seen how, it brings people to that point where they're kind of like, okay, now I want to go talk to the chaplain, because I'm kind of to this point where, I need God, and I've had people kind of admit like, I should have been coming to him, when things were going good as well, but it just teaches us, when we get to that point where we have to depend on him. I'm just glad I get to be there, for them in that. So
Yeah, it's because it's so amazing. I feel like when you have somebody that is in a position in their life, or they're a part of something where every day I feel like you're almost faced with your own kind of mortality. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, oh, hey, like this is something that I need, and it's brought to you because it's like you would be reminded more than just the average person in the suburb, on their day to day with a comfortable life,
Yeah. Yeah, and there may be some extent where their soldiers kind of display kind of a fearlessness sometimes, where they try and avoid that feeling.
Yeah.
But the fact is, like, bad things happen, and when
They're
and
humans.
when they see it, when they see it, it's sometimes they don't know what to do because they have been kind of ignoring that reality of mortality.
Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, there's probably not anyone in the service who hasn't lost someone or been to a memorial ceremony, because it happens a lot. And life is constantly happening, especially in the guard, in the National Guard, where we have a civilian life and we have a military life. There's just a strain. Like, I think that's one of the big things with the National Guard is there's this strain from living these two worlds.
Yeah, yeah.
Being
Bouncing back and forth a bit,
bouncing back and
yeah.
forth. That can be a big strain. Is just those kinds of things, managing their work life, their family life, their military life.
Yeah.
It can be kind of difficult, and things can come up in between drills. Family stuff, financial issues, health issues. So
Sure. So, JB, you grew up in a military family,
Yes.
right? So tell us, like, do you feel like in terms of, who is it in your family in the military?
My dad retired a colonel from the Army.
Okay.
And, I think as far as every time we had moved from place to place, my dad's also a pastor of a church in Virginia. And he'd been doing ministry my whole life. And so he never was a chaplain, but we often would go to chaplain services like on post or things like that. And I think that it was amazing to see how he definitely had that where, I remember he was part of Operation Desert Storm. And I remember whenever he would talk about it, I would ask him like, oh, hey, like, how would you face the idea that, at any moment that you could just, you could die, or you're out there. And he, and he was telling me, he's like, hey, the Lord, has promised, like, I have an eternal hope. And that was the one thing that kind of made, his time in the service, where that was the one thing. And constantly I think it was the ministry of my dad and the way that he kind of held himself as a believer, even in the military space, because it's so true. Even in the military, I think in any kind of way, but very strongly in the military for sure. I think there's this kind of thing where there's this identity tied to being in the military. And so I think one of the things that I admired about my dad was that he definitely had that because, I think, he was fully all in, but I think to see that, the way that it all then came back to what he trusted in as a believer, that was ultimately the thing that was the foundation that kept him steady in any situation. And so that's kind of what I got to witness
yeah.
on him.
Wow.
I love that. So, Spencer, in terms of, you mentioned, you're kind of in an environment with many different people, many different camps, and, you want to be sensitive to people, but you also want to make sure you're true to your faith and stuff. And a lot of us go through this, especially, even if you're in any kind of industry or whatever, you're always like, how can I show the light of Christ to people? And be sensitive to where they're at, and to the standards of, whatever organization I'm in or whatever. Have you found it okay, the Lord's given me some good ways where I can more specifically share Jesus or opportunities that are still, that.
Yeah.
in that
Yeah. I find it just, the best way is just, sincerely, naturally, just how the best way that you can just be natural and be who you are where you are. And so it's important, I found, to first of all hear where the person is coming from, right?
Yeah.
What is their background? What spiritual beliefs do they have that inform them and support them, and are they relying on, or do they have a lot of questions, right? Are they set in something specifically, or are they just kind of trying to feel things out? Like where are they as far as their commitments, right? That's very important for me to know. But then I just sincerely ask, hey, from this perspective, I see certain things. Can I share with you and just be honest? Like, I come from this Southern Baptist perspective. Would you want to hear, what what I view as the truth in this situation, or what I see as what the Bible teaches about the situation, right? And just give them that option to say,
Sure.
yes, keep going, or no,
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to listen, right? And I put it in their court and say, let them say yes or no.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just very honestly, like, so.
I love that. I love you have that opportunity. That's so good. Man, love it. So, more of a fun question. So you're a chaplain
Yes.
in the military. Do you do like combat exercises? Do you get like fake bullets shot at you? I don't know how any of that works.
Yeah. So we go to this thing. So chaplains, they direct commission as officers into the National Guard or whichever branch, active duty or reserves. You commission in, and I always thought that you would go first to the training, but no, they actually sent me to my unit first. I didn't know anything about being in the military when I first showed up.
Oh, that must have been awkward.
Other than what my brigade chaplain did to kind of meet up with me and get me kind of dressed the right way, and so I showed up and just started doing the best I could just to minister and just be there and learn, right? And I think that's a very important part of being a chaplain, is just being honest, like, hey, I don't know what you're doing with that military thing that you have right there. Tell me what your job is, and just learning about them and what they're doing. But yeah, I didn't have any military training prior. So once I got to my unit, I got signed up for a course that's called the Chaplain Basic Officer Leader course, and it's about a 13-week course in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, that we go and we learn kind of the basics of being a soldier, and then an officer, and then a chaplain in that context. So they'll do everything to get you ready to do that, to learn all that stuff. But we do not carry weapons as chaplains. We're actually, Army regulation says that we cannot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Does everybody else? Does every other position carry a weapon?
Yes.
Or wow.
Yeah, we're the
Okay.
only- but we do not.
Interesting.
So yeah, but we have to do everything else. We have to pass the same fitness standards and things like that. And and we travel with our units where they go. Our battalion, if our battalion's deploying, we deploy with our battalion. We'll sleep in the field with them, So
Wow.
yeah, so we're just along for the ride.
Wow.
Yep.
It's an amazing opportunity. Have you ever been deployed?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Awesome.
I deployed end of 2020 through the summer of 2021. So, yeah, we got to be part of what's called the Multinational Force and Observers mission.
Wow.
Which is a very interesting thing to be a part of. It's actually a peacekeeping organization made up of like 16 different militaries working together to monitor the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. And so,
Whoa.
so I was there for that time, and went with my battalion on their rotation for that. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Well, Spencer, thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for letting me be on this cool podcast.
It was a divine encounter, I believe. So, and Spencer is actually here recruiting for the chaplaincy. And so Is it okay if I drop in the description a link or something for?
Yes. Is there a way to like give that to you later?
Yeah. You just give me the link and I'll drop it in the description so people can, sign up and get more information if
Okay.
they're interested. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for coming on.
All right. Thank you.
As a reminder, the Prayer Culture Podcast is a ministry of Two or More, which is a crowd-funded ministry. So if you enjoy this content, please check out our website and giving page listed in the description. Also, when you have a second, hit the like and subscribe button.